the worst selling cars of 2023. I'm not saying be a trendsetter, but there's a few vehicles, actually 10 that I can speak of. I've done some digging and researching and found 10 vehicles that are the worst selling vehicles this year in 2023 so far in the United States, and a clear reflection over to Canada. And the majority of markets are seeing very similar things. You know, my research is showing me that there are distinctly some vehicles that just don't sell. Customers aren't looking for that. Or they see it, they recognize it, but they realize A, there's no value, B, maybe it's poorly built and maybe it has a bad reputation, or even out of principle, they're just not interested in buying a car because they know historically a brand maybe is a ripoff, and just the offering just doesn't make sense for a lot of people. So there's clearly a lot of vehicles on the market that are accessible, some that aren't, and a lot of it has to do with vehicles that are accessible, but these vehicles may be somewhat available but just aren't selling. So let's dive right in, folks, because and I'll really kind of give you the numbers, the hard facts as to the vehicles that are not selling and kind of why they're not selling. Let's start with number one. We have a model from, we all know, GMC Hummer. Everybody knows the Hummer, right? The Humvee. It started with the H1 and kind of went down to the H2, and then the H3 was a watered-down minivan of sorts. And it didn't have a good engine. It was just a real wannabe watered-down version. And people, I think, are just done with Hummers. They're just finished with that brand. They're just done with it. I think they feel that, GM thought, hey, we can maybe milk a little more out of the brand and out of that brand name. And they continue trying to milk this brand all the way from the H1 to the H2. They kept milking. By the time you're at H3, that thing was milk dry. There was nothing left. But here they go. They're trying to milk it some more. And the GMC Hummer, there's an EV now. And what I'll say is, apparently 65 people this year in 2023 in all of the United States has put down money, their hard-earned dollars, to actually buy this EV Hummer. Now, EVs in general are a real polarizing conversation. Some are loving it, some are willing to get on board. But a lot of times what you're finding is people are just willing to try Tesla first because they've sort of the pioneers. Along comes GM trying to get their bite full and clearly missed the mark. So with 65 units sold, I can't say that it's a surprise. It's overpriced. It's a gargantuan beast. It has huge amounts of mass to haul around, and it's just overpriced. Period. And again, they just keep milking that market. So another one that kind of clearly hits the radar is Mazda. Now, generally, I've seen Mazdas be quite popular, and I think Mazda's doing some great things in the last little bit here. Mazda 3 is one of the really popular models. The CX-5, CX-50, there's some very cool little hot rod models out there. Sky Active, blah, blah, blah. And clearly there's a lot of customers that really like what Mazda's doing these days. They're a lot more reliability. They've made it up the ranks, with the likes of Consumers Reports are claiming they're up there with the Lexus, Toyota, Mazda's up there, they're even above Hondas. And so, Mazda's made a good reputation, but they have a model right now, it's called the MX-30. It's just not selling very well. And, essentially what you're talking about is a battery extender, a battery rotary per se with a battery extender, not great for great range. And people are like, if I have to work with an EV, or if I need an electric vehicle, or if I need a hybrid vehicle, and I need that extra technology, I better damn sure get that range out of it. And the we're talking about the MX-30 just has crap range. So it's not getting the range. Customers are getting kind of done with it. And they're thinking, kind of the way I'm thinking, it's kind of pricey. And if we're going with that tech and we can't get range, what's the point of it? As a matter of fact, would you realize in 2023, only 66 customers bought one of these Mazda MX-30s. So there's a very good possibility you will never see one on the road. And quite frankly, I think Mazda is going to end up turfing that unit just because they just sort of missed the mark. Another one that's kind of hit the radar is Hyundai. What is this? Nexo? You heard of the Nexo? I haven't really, other than seeing it here. Basically, it's a hydrogen-powered car in the U.S. And we know hydrogen power, there's a lot of, Toyota's really diving into that technology, hydrogen-powered fuel cells. Here's one right here, the Hyundai Nexo. They're all trying that because they realize that EV has limitations. It's clean, but then you have the plug-in factor, and you're relying on the grid, and there's other factors there. And others are relying on the fact that they like still sort of what resembles an internal combustion engine to a capacity, a certain degree, but basically puking out water on the back end. So it makes people feel good. It actually really does. And the Nexo, though, unfortunately, not a surprise, because hydrogen power technology is just not there yet. Toyota's realizing that. They're trying to get on board with it as well. But realize only about 105 people decided to put their hard-earned dollars down on this Hyundai Nexo. So clearly it's not a popular unit. Another version, or another vehicle this year that's one of the worst sellers. I can't say it's a shocker. I think they're actually kind of unique. And so if you're looking for something spirited, unique, and Italian, you might be interested in this. But the reality is the majority of the population doesn't feel the same way. So if you want to dive into an Alfa Romeo Tonale, or I like to call it toenail, for a lack of better terminology, Tonale, toenail, or Tonale, or whatever you want to call it. In the US, it hasn't really sold all that well. Hasn't gone smoothly. Alfa's really just kind of, they're struggling. They're struggling trying to break and emerge through the US market. Years ago they had products. They always gained a reputation of lacking reliability. They always have soul and passion, but they lack that quality that a lot of customers and consumers really expected. As far as that goes, only about 118 people have purchased a brand new Tonale, which is, one of the latest Alfa Romeo SUVs. So not a good seller. It's also, the Dodge Hornet. Kind of the same vehicle. Anyway, Toyota Grand Highlander, another one. And so Toyota Grand Highlander, does that kind of resonate? Doesn't with me either. We all know the Highlander, and the Highlander, the hybrids and the Toyotas, but the Grand Highlander, what we're talking about here is by the end of the year, we're sure that it won't even be on this list like this. But since it has only recently gone on sale, Toyota's only sold 159. And again, some of that is just because it's new to the market. We all know that Toyota's a great selling product. People they have trust, they have faith. They truly do believe in the brand. And I do believe eventually it might catch on. The fact remains, a Highlander is not a cheap vehicle. And when you say grand, it clearly implies that there's more money. It's bigger, more expensive, more luxurious, and you're going to spend more money on it. The other fact is, part of the reason why Toyota's not selling a lot of vehicles, and this one kind of adds to that list, is because they're doing the on demand, essentially the on-time delivery method, where you sign the paperwork and you wait. There's no vehicles on the lot really to speak of. You pretty much got to go in there into the network or into the dealership network, sit down, talk about it, put your money down, and get the vehicle in a year, 6 months, or if it's a hybrid, probably 2 years. And that on-time delivery method or technique is causing Toyota to be a little backlogged and customers to have to wait a little longer for their cars. So that's part of the reason as well why Toyota is slow to selling this Highlander, plus the fact, as I said, it's newer to the market. So I would anticipate that to start accelerating. The Audi R8. Did you realize last year it sold about 159. This year we're at about 186. So there's a little bit of an uptick between last year and this year, so we're seeing a few more sales this year. But let's face it, the Audi R8, everybody knows it's on the way out the door. So the R8, great car, same platform as a Lamborghini Huracan, or the earlier versions are the same as the Gallardo. So a lot of people see the value in the R8, where they say, hey, I can have a Lamborghini type performance car, but without the badge, but without the price tag. So for a while it represented good value, and people were buying the R8s. They were going out like hotcakes. But in recent years, Audi's advertised that they're going to drop that car like a hot potato, and the R8 is one of those models that's just going to go bye-bye by the dodo bird. It's just not going to sell. It's not selling right now. There's a lot of great exotic cars out on the market, and the R8 is kind of old hat. It's a great performance car, and hats off to anybody who buys one, because they're still an amazing car, but it's becoming a little long in the tooth. So another one, and here's another one. You talk about long in the tooth. I think this car has been long, like the ship has sailed. Part of the reason why this vehicle is not selling that well anymore is, number one, it's been around a long time, which I just said. Number two, it's also way too expensive for what it is now. It's an older technology. They've made incremental updates and power increases over the years, but it's such an old platform. The interior is blasé. It's starting to feel more outdated than a modern day Subaru Impreza. The interior is just pretty bland. The performance is pretty spectacular, but again, it's an old platform that's kind of dying, if you ask me. And what we're talking about is the Nissan GTR. Did you realize that there's only about 217 of these sold this year? That's not a big number. That was one of their hot potatoes. We all know that they were really popular about 10 years ago. They're kind of losing their momentum and their inertia. There's a lot of great options on the market. Honestly, if you're looking at that and that kind of money, now you're into Porsche territory. I don't know about you, but if I'm going to spend 200K on a car, I'm probably going to look at a 911. Maybe even put money down on the new Z06 C8 Corvette. Possibly the last of the generation of the Jaguar F-Type with the F-Type R, 550 or 575 ponies. Kind of the last one out the gates as well. Some great choices out there, some great options in that space. The GTR is just, it's a dying dinosaur. Another one is the Fiat 500X. Not a popular car. You think for a car that was that small and economical that it would do better in terms of sales? Yeah, it's not. 277 people decided they were going to waste their money, piss it down the toilet, and purchase a Fiat 500X, which is essentially Chrysler, Jeep, Fiat, kind of all that same conglomeration of catastrophes and catastrophic failures waiting to happen, with bad transmissions and funky engines and multi-air and just a bad design all the way around. Yeah, just not a good car. And I think people, it's catching on. I mean, I'm all for a lot of great Italian cars. This isn't really a good representation, the Fiat 500X, so bye-bye Fiat, not many sold there. The Audi Q8 Sportback e-tron, another one. Well, did you realize only about 340 people have purchased one so far this year? Quite obviously why? Well, A, they're really expensive. I mean, it's an Audi product, it's a premium, it's a luxury. It is nice, on the other hand, though, to see that some of the other luxury brands are stepping up to the plate and building cars that are good competitors with Tesla. They create similar performance, much better looking, much better style, better luxury, just a nicer packaging. But again, as I say, I think people are just a little slow to get into the EV market in general. And then those that are getting in there are most likely to look at the Teslas rather than go directly and take a bigger chance on an Audi e-tron or take a bigger chance and buy a Porsche Taycan. I've seen lots of incentives there for the Porsche, by the way, because they're really trying to put their foot, jump in both feet first into the scalding water that is electric vehicles. But honestly, the Q8 Sportback e-tron has a lot of reliability issues, lots of gremlins and glitches. And, Audi, we're just waiting for them to pull that one out of the hot water. The Genesis G90 as well. Yeah. Here's a car that I think you could push your luck so far. Genesis evolved from Hyundai. Hyundai, we knew what the Hyundai Pony. Do you remember the Pony and the Excel? Very cheap. Trash box cars, way back in the 80s. They weren't well made. Oil burners, leakers, catastrophic failures, electric problems. They were meant to head right to the dumpster after 3 or 4 quick years. You don't see any on the road anymore. Actually, I haven't seen any in probably 15 years. They just never were made to last. But it's that very company that has evolved, and granted, they've created a lot of great products from a styling standpoint and technology perspective. But there's still that background. There's still that history. You can't forget your ancestors, right? I mean, we had a history there. We all come from someplace, like all of us. But this Hyundai and the Genesis G90 is the same story. And honestly, they're trying to compete with the Merc and the S Series and the 7 Series BMWs. And I know there's some people out there, the fans of the Genesis product line, and they're going to say, hey, but it's way better. But there's no substance. There's no history. There's no chic, there's no, what's the word I'm looking for? There's just nothing there yet. I mean, it's going to take them years to build that reputation. Three-pointed star has been around for a long time. That's some big boots to fill. As a result, only about 703 units have sold this year of the G90. BMW XM, yeah, 761 units. Yeah, that's their kind of really, it's a love-hate kind of vehicle. I think it has a kind of a unique look. The big bold grille, it really stands out. But again, it's BMW. People are nervous. Then they think BMW and they start really diving into some of the more advanced technology, electrification. And there's the word, that whole idea of, just bringing every piece of tech into the latest and the greatest. I think there's this general fear that that's about as most complex BMW that's ever hit the market. And as a result, I think, price tag and complexity and there's a reputation that has hurt them. And so as a result, the XM's not selling all that well. The Q8 e-tron, another one I mentioned already. There was the one version, but the other version, just the basic Q8 e-tron, also not selling well. About 779 have sold this year so far as well. So they're clearly, for the same reasons, it's a high price tag, it's a big risk. There's some quality control concerns there yet, and so people just aren't buying them yet. Might take a few years in the seat to work through that. Here's one that's a bit of a surprise to probably some of you. This one's a little higher end, but another vehicle that's just not selling well. And a lot of people say, well, it's one of the best, most reliable car brands on the planet. Our local dealer here actually has two of them sitting on the lot, and they've been there for a while. They're just not selling. And it's the Lexus LC. That's right, the LC. There's a hybrid, there's a LC 500. It's a popular, it's got that 472 horsepower V8. It's naturally aspirated, it makes some great sounds. It's not as hardcore as like the AMG GTR. It's not as hardcore as an F-Type R Jaguar. It's luxurious, and the fitment and the quality of the interior finishing is nice. It makes some great sounds out of the exhaust tips, but again, it's just one of those cars that, it's a really big price tag. You got to think about the demographic, right? It's really all about that. Think about I don't know. Think about Kia. We know what Kia is. It represents a mainstream, high volume buyer. Somebody that's looking for something affordable, relatively low cost, easy to get into. Can you imagine all of a sudden Kia comes out with a $500,000 hypercar? Who's buying it? Well, it has no pedigree, so most typical hybrid supercars buyers are not buying it. And Kia buyers aren't going to buy it because they're not that type of buyer. So, and this is kind of where the LC is, and it's a beautiful car. It truly fits one of my criteria for, the GT style cruisers, the F-Type, the LC, as well as the GT series of AMGs. But again, it's becoming a little bit of an older platform as well, and the performance is down from its competitors. So I think because of that, the fact it's well over 100 grand just puts it in an awkward position. Again, most Lexus buyers are what? Buying a hybrid, an RC, or they're buying an RX 350, or they're buying an IS or an ES. The traditional buyer is looking for that $60,000 luxury, medium level luxury vehicle that's just reliable. That's what a Lexus buyer is looking for. Not necessarily looking for this. It was a very niche car from a brand that isn't historically known for that. And only about 825 have been sold this year of the LC. So one of the worst selling vehicles. I'm going to throw some other ones in here for good faith. So those are kind of about 10 of them. Some other vehicles that just aren't selling very well. And we see it on the lots. We're seeing lately a lot of the Jeep products, Stellantis products aren't selling very well. Wranglers are overpriced these days. I mean, it's not uncommon to find a Wrangler priced over 100K. That's ludicrous from a vehicle that's probably worth 30 grand. So those are hanging out there, and you'll find a lot of these car lots, the new lots that are selling vehicles like the Dodges, the Stellantis products, the Jeeps, all of those. they have a lot of inventory on their lots. They're just not selling. So at the end of the day, those are some of the worst sellers so far of this year, 2023. Coincidentally, a lot of them are luxury vehicles. And so what is that telling you? Well, we've transitioned because we know a year ago, 2 years ago, people were spending their savings during, obviously I don't even want to mention it, the P word. People were going out buying luxury vehicles. Now we've sort of turned around that corner, and what we're finding now are people are getting back down to nitty gritty. Inflation's up. Interest rates are way up, 7, 8, 9% and beyond. So the idea of buying a luxury car is starting to become more of a distant memory. People are less inclined now to buy a luxury car. And so I think you're finding some of the outliers, like these ones, there's less of palate, less of an appetite to buy some of those luxury vehicles. Cars, we'll get into another video here because clearly there's some really hot sellers and some sellers that you want to buy, some cars that you want to buy coming up, and some that are really just flipping hands very quickly because they're so popular. And most of them are popular because the quality, the reliability, the cost, the practicality, the value for the money. So we'll get into that in another video. But anyway, enough about that. I really appreciate you guys all sticking around. If you want to see more about what's going on over at Ford, the big three is going through some really big struggles right there. You definitely want to check that out. I'll tell you all about what the latest is on in the Ford house. Clearly, they're going through some big time struggles. Hope to see each and every one in the next one. We'll see you real soon. Bye-bye.